Yeah, we've been critical about the IoT things, and we have some more critics coming up because we have Marcel Schouwenaar, is right. Perfect, okay. My Dutch is not really good, but I've got Monique teaching me. He's from Rotterdam. He's also a design consultant. He's the founder of The Incredible Machine. I like that company name, really. And he's co-author of the IoT Manifesto, which is focusing on ethical dilemmas and the question how to develop things that A, don't suck and won't pollute our environment and are responsible with consumer data and so on. So he will focus on that. And after this talk, Marcel will talk to Peter Beer. Some of you might know him. He was at Netzpiloten.de for a long time. Now he's the managing director of the Waving Cat. Maybe you know the blog. And he's a Q-curator of Next, and they will talk about other things that Marcel will tell us now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let me put this away for a second. So, last week, my dad called me, and he said his computer was taken hostage, and he had no clue what was happening. He sent me a screenshot. He was like freaking out. He said, you gotta come here and fix this. He never thought this was possible. Like his computer, he barely used this particular computer, and luckily he had a backup, so we can just erase the machine, put the backup on there. But the interesting thing is that my dad used to be a programmer. Like he built like stuff in Turbo Pascal and all the kinds of like ancient languages, but he knows how that stuff works, and he felt really inadequate. He was like, how come I know this machine from the inside out? How come this is happening? And the interesting thing is this is happening on a mature platform. We're talking about Microsoft Windows on a fairly new machine. This is a platform that has been around for 20 years. Now, what if we are going to connect objects to the web? What if we're going to apply the rules and the experience that we have, like the models that we have, onto our physical world? So, don't get me wrong, I am fairly optimistic about the Internet of Things, but I was just not asked to talk about the optimistic part. So I'm going to be optimistic, though, and this very nicely ties into Alex's talks just before. When the rules of the web apply to our physical world, we are not able to deal with that yet. We don't have the behavior to deal with that yet. What if a stupid update of your phone locks you out of your house? And this is actually happening. I'm not talking hypothetical. This is happening at the moment. Update to iOS 9 and you'll be locked out of your house. So, I mean, there are opportunities. I want to know when I need to water my plants. I want that to know. I want to be alarmed when, I know, a kitchen fire breaks out for something smarter than just an annoying alarm, even when I'm not home. But there are dilemmas now in entering this new field of connecting the physical world with the digital. And I quaintly call it, this is the thing with things. Because when shaping the connected world, it isn't a clear-cut exercise. It is hard. So, all right, the Internet of Things, we've discussed it, and most of you know this this term. I'm all for it. I'm consulting companies to design objects and services for the Internet of Things. But we also help companies deal with the organizational change they need to go through to learn what it means to be an IoT company. What if you are a company that, for instance, is making retail furniture, and they want to enter the space where they're going to connect those objects? Imagine that you have had a company with carpenters and with technical drawing, technical engineers, and suddenly you need a help desk, you need developers, you have a CEO that suddenly has to decide upon a data and security and privacy policy. And that is weird. But luckily, things go really well as well. Let's emphasize the good stuff as well. I mean, this is a great example of Philips, who managed to... The funny thing is, a couple of years ago, Philips came to us, and they said, can you help us to connect our shavers and our toothbrushes and think with us with interesting concepts? And we sat with them and for a while, and then we said, all right, we found no use case. There's just no use case. You know, don't try to make this happen. There's no use case. And then there was one tiny idea they followed through with, and that was having a connected toothbrush for kids that would give them points for brushing their teeth. Philips is now shipping this particular product, and they had to issue a software update last week because kids got addicted to brushing their teeth. Good things happen. And although 90% of what's happening in the field of IoT is mainly business to business, still I, as a consumer, benefit from it. This is an old example already of John Deere. They're now selling their farming equipment with sensors, and they want to gather as much data as possible from farmers, how they farm and how they grow their crops. And together with a supplier of seeds, together with fertilizer companies, together with the weather companies, they managed to build a whole ecosystem around farming, and they're now able to precisely help out the farmers where to plant what, when, how to water it, when to apply pesticides or whatever, and in the end produce more biologically sustainable farming. So this Internet of Things thing is going to happen. It is going to happen anyway. Whether we're optimistic or skeptical, this stuff is moving its way into our lives. And it's thanks to Moore's law that the price of having sensors in something, having a microprocessor in something, having connectivity available in all different kind of protocols, prices are dropping, and they enter this marginal cost level where it can be interesting. I mean, today we're going to connect some furniture. The next day we're going to connect more mundane things like a fork and a spoon. I don't know, but we have to be aware of that. We're making products that we want to have. So the problem with it, like, why are we so, like, why do you hear a bit of skepticism all the time? Well, the thing is, if you look at how companies work, there is a certain pursuit of competitive advantages. That's just how naturally thing goes. Companies seek for, like, giving them an edge to improve on some feature, to be more efficient, to be cheaper, etc. And the problem is that these are really strong forces in business. It's a strong force to make more efficient, more a cleaner, faster production, but then we see that the actual end users, they get forgotten a lot of times. And there are, basically in business, there are no advocates for the user, because it's now, for 90%, we're talking about efficiency, connecting, improving, etc. So, you know, take for instance here, this is like a solution a client of us wants to apply in their retail stores to track every single behavior of a person. Well, I guess Scott's talk already gave us quite an insight in what that would mean for us as a connected human being, the good sides and the bad sides. So as a designer in this space, I face dilemmas. And I cannot highlight every dilemma, but I'm gonna talk about some of them. One is, just because we can connect something doesn't mean we should. And I contemplated whether I should be putting in a connected fridge here, but I think we should, because this is an example of a thing that still has a long way to go to become useful. But we see that, and that's also what Alex addressed in her talks, money is flowing in the wrong direction at the moment. There is a startup here in Germany that actually make a sock management device where you can make sure you have matching socks at your feet that have been washed exactly the same amount of time. And I think if we are flocking to these kind of solutions, if money is flowing in this kind of directions, we're on the wrong path. We should be making stuff that actually matters to people. And this may not be obvious, but like take Barbie, and I would like very coincidentally, Alex mentioned Barbie. Barbie is on the cover of New York Times Magazine at this moment because she has a brain now. Mattel puts Siri in a Barbie, and you can now talk with a Barbie. Well, what I would like to argue with, I've been in the toy industry for a couple of years now because one of our major clients is Lego, so we're like dealing with high-quality toys all the time and technology. And what we see is technology needs to add something, it needs to bring something better, it needs to improve the play experience, it needs to improve what a toy should be. And to be honest, connecting Barbie or talking to Barbie isn't what we should be doing, I think. That's my opinion. Another dilemma is to what extent, how, and we should keep a secret. Because consumers often, like, we address privacy, we talk about privacy, but what do we do about our privacy policy? We still Facebook, we still Google, and we're kind of fine with that because we entrust them with our data, and we say, all right, that's all right. And what they know from me, it's fine, they can know. But what if there are things you don't want companies to know? And how can we predict what we want our suppliers to know from us? It's not an IoT example, but like take Ashley Madison. You must have all heard about this. There was a dating site for affairs for people, and hackers managed to extract all the user data and put it online. And suddenly the web freaked out. Suddenly privacy mattered, like on big time. And that's because it's clear. I mean, it's a very obvious thing that you don't want to be associated with having an Ashley Madison account. But now think about like data that's been generated by, I don't know, a light switch. To what extent do I think now that's a privacy issue? But we should be aware of that. We should be able to predict that. Another thing is that if you are entering the IoT space, you suddenly become part of this connected sphere, connected world, and your object too will become a vulnerability. At the moment today, there was an article published on that now. They assessed 30 baby monitors that are now streaming data to the web, unencrypted, unsecure, and everybody can tap into that. Well, you can argue what's the worst thing that can happen when people access my baby monitor? Well, people can look if you're home, but there have been examples of people screaming through the baby monitor into a child's room, saying, "Wake up, baby, wake up," while the parents were in the living room. And that's creepy. Now, it even gets more creepier if that same vulnerability becomes an entry point to your life. And this is an article from 2012 where the CIA just blatantly admitted, if you have an insecure dishwasher, we'll spy through that dishwasher to you. Now, I don't say that designers can solve all these issues, but we should be aware of it, that, you know, if we really want to do a connected baby monitor, we bring in a lot of dynamic around that into the home. And that's what we've, as designers and developers and business people, can be aware of. But to what extent, and I love the slide that Alex presented with the label about what a thing does and where the data is left, because usually people don't get how it works. They bring in a connected lock, and to them it's literally a black box. They don't get how it works, and the usual explanation would be, it all happens in the cloud. Well, I have news. There is no cloud. It's just your stuff on another one's computer. Not mine. Yeah. And then if you are, like, as a designer, you are in this space and you're designing your connected product, you have to make decisions on where, how I'm gonna connect my thing. I mean, doing a light switch. I flick a switch here, it goes through a server somewhere in the United States, they send ping back to my LED bulb and it turns on. That's fine, that's a one-on-one relationship with this little cloud in between. Oh wait, that's another person's computer that can be accessed by other people. Now there are interesting opportunities for that. We saw the dash button, that actually one press of a button mobilizes a whole network of stakeholders. But you have to be deliberate about that decision, who is involved in that network of stakeholders. Like an example from Samsung, who shipped a television a couple of years ago with a EULA, an end-user license agreement, that stated that, oh, by the way, our like super cool feature that you can talk to, you can voice control the television. Yeah, we're sending that data to a third party to be analyzed, so please don't discuss any private matter in front of your television. They might listen in on that. Samsung fixed this, unfortunately they fixed it, they changed the EULA, kept the feature in. Now, Samsung is doing a great job nowadays, by the way. I have to admit, I have to be clear, like, Samsung learned from their failure, but like, their first response was changing the license agreement, which was totally the wrong response. Now they've actually got a good policy in place, I have to admit. And the other thing is, to what extent does a user can they be aware of this? I don't know if you like TomTom Navigation a couple of years ago, they sold the user data to the Dutch police for the sake of improving roads and avoiding congestion and stuff. But there's just no way that I, as a consumer, can screw open my TomTom, look in the components and see, aha. No, it's just, you know, it's a very shallow endpoint to a bigger system. And we have to be deliberate about what we're creating, because sometimes the seamless user experience that we're presenting, like I love Uber for their user experience, but we sustain a system with implications that we cannot, from a consumer perspective, we cannot always understand. And from a business perspective, of course, it's super smart to have an algorithm-defined cab fares to drive like the supply and demand structure. But in the end, we kind of enslave the Uber driver to a network where they don't have any control over. And as a designer, we think we can do something about it, because the IoT is great. It's a phenomenal opportunity for like everyone to do good, to create the healthcare of the future, all the way up to make stupid gadgets that are fun. But we need, as designers, developers, we need to take a stance, and we want to be part of that development. So we teamed up with a bunch of designers from the Netherlands, academia, we consulted advisors, and we drafted the IoT Design Manifesto, which outlines 10 principles, kind of like game rules for designers to make sure we're doing the right IoT in the right way. They're laying around here in the hall, and there's some on stage, so please consult me for that. So I didn't write it all by myself, don't get me wrong, I was in a big team and we had an advisory board. I need to give credit where it's due. And this is like the manifesto, and I will discuss it with Peter. So, yeah, all right, this is the manifesto. So I hope this will become my legacy from the next few years. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Marcel.
You're welcome.
So, like the Internet of Things, ethics are often like a little bit of an abstract notion, right? But you're not talking about hypotheticals. You had some very concrete examples, and for you in your day-to-day work as a designer, this boils down to day-to-day meetings where you sit with product companies, where you sit with marketing companies, and you have to actually make these calls and convince your clients to also like consider these rules that may be not intuitive.
Yeah.
How does that, first of all, how does that work in a day-to-day setting?
That's very interesting. Usually when clients approach us, they already have a kind of notion what they want to do or what they want to be. We don't get the request. Like it used to be that companies came to us and said, yeah, we need to do something with IoT, help us out. And nowadays they say, all right, we want to build a user tracking system in a stadium. Can you help us out? And actually, that's immediately we bring up the manifesto. We say, you know, we're fine, we're going to figure this out, but we're going to figure this out in an ethical way.
So you just slap it on the table and
we
say,
literally
we got this right here?
Yeah, we literally slap it on the table, and we give it, they take it home, and it's up to them to decide. Like some of my mentors said, well, one of my mentors said, you're biting the hand that feeds you, but if that's the hand that feeds me, I don't want that hand to be feeding me.
Right, and so...
Thanks.
So as we add connectivity to more and more products, as the internet reaches out into the physical world, which is something we see happen everywhere, right? We had the dimension of Car2Go, we see this in connected toothbrushes. We will see this increasingly where this just happens to everything we see and we own. But that also means that a product doesn't stop, it's not finished by the time it leaves the company's door, right? And by the time it enters your home. It'll be a service to some degree. Yeah. Is there a business use case that you can make for the ethical implications for the IoT Manifesto as a business case?
I think so. I think there's an opportunity in building a network that is like around these objects that is actually insightful, like that provides insight to people. I love the example that Alex used, especially the last line that says your data goes here. And I think there's a business model. I think there can even be a potentially independent institute concerned with this to make sure we issue standards for electrical safety and sustainability and whatever. There can be an institute for sending out licenses for an ethically produced product. It can be maybe even a standard.
I read a quote recently. I think it was from Adam Greenfield, who's a big thinker and researcher around smart cities, and he said, oh, it was him. Ethical decisions are made increasingly at the interface level, and he applied it to the city where he said, oftentimes, many of these decisions are not very deliberate. They're just like someone just like wants to ship something and they build it, and all of a sudden, someone can make a choice or cannot make a choice or can only make certain choices, not others. How does that, can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, that's really interesting because our role as designers in this field has often been questioned, like, all right, aren't designers late to the game if it comes to product development? And they say, well, usually we are involved in creating what's all the way at the end, what's facing, like the thin layer that's between the user and this whole system, but we define how this thin layer will work. We design what goes in and what comes out and what goes through. And that's what the system has to work with. So our mantra has been lately, like the last 3 years, it's about experience, experience, experience. So we focus on this, on like the last millimeter of the whole interaction, and there we hopefully make the right decisions. But there are a lot of systems that aren't user-facing or consumer-facing. I think Scott had a brilliant article up on his blog about the invisible things that watch us, like the nondescript black beacons and boxes and whatever. They are there. They don't tell you what they do. They don't tell you how they sense you. That's just a black box, and it does something, and it generates some data, and it provides some service, but maybe not even to me. In that case, the interface is practically non-existent between the user, whatever the user is. So, and there's a lot to win, still.
Actually, we talked a lot about the retail settings, which is an obvious place because you can measure, you want to measure, you want analytics, and there's a very clear, very strong case to measure retail experiences and sales stuff. It gets a little more abstract when you zoom out to the city level, and it gets very concrete when you enter the home and the smart home. Have you had any touch points with smart home appliances in any way, and how that you mentioned the dishwasher that the CIA can spy through.
Yeah.
I saw news about a fridge that was hacked to expose your Gmail passwords because it was Wi-Fi connected and not very secure once it tapped into the network. Can you tell us a little bit about the smart home and because it's a special safe place usually, right?
Yeah,
so
the smart home is a really, actually I think it's the weirdest domain to be in, because it is usually, like, we've embedded this notion of when I step through my front door and I close the door behind me and I pull up, anyway, I'll dress appropriately. In my house, that's me, that's my decision. And I close the curtains and it's my domain, and nobody's coming in, nobody's going out, and that's ingrained and embedded into into who we are, in our caveman DNA. I am not sure if the smart home, how we should design the smart home that it connects with that it keeps up, that it fits into our behavior, because that's important. And to be honest, like, I have gadgets at the office, at the studio to play around with. I never brought one home. I don't have any smart object in my home because I'm perfectly fine with, you know, when the water cooker is done, it just stops bubbling and I know it's done, and I go there and I make a cup of tea. I don't need to, to give the strange example, it would send a ping to my phone. My phone will probably be somewhere so I don't know where it is, usually stuck in the couch somewhere, so it looks like boom. That's all I hear. So I see very little convincing cases for the smart home, although it becomes interesting if you're going to tie it into services like delivery, mail. I have, actually, it was really funny, I get my groceries delivered at home, the vegetables and meat, right from the farm, straight to my home, and the dude just has a key of my front door. Right. And he just walks into my house, he puts it down there, and I know the guy, and I trust him, and there are like 1,000 people now trusting him, so he has 1,000 front door keys. And this is an interesting space, but I see.
So you're saying basically that the user's gone there, but that sounds like teething problems, right? It might just take a while to figure out what the actual use cases will be.
Yeah, but I think they're on the edges where services usually stop at your front door and maybe spill over a bit till right behind your front door. But that's about it.
Right. And you, so...
Yeah, well, it was a bit cheating, the toothbrush, because it's connected to the iPad, it's connected to a game, and it relies on a wireless standard, but that's it. They don't disclose that. That information doesn't travel any further. So as a parent, you cannot, like on your personal app, see if your kid brushes his teeth. You just have to go up to the app that he's using and check if he does it, if you want to check it. So would there be a case to disclose the toothbrush information through a web service? Maybe. Would I give it priority? Maybe not.
Right. And so you had 10 guidelines for designing ethical IoT products, and we won't go through all of them. Some of them are more obvious than others, like we don't believe the hype, we design useful things, we try to keep everything secure, respect privacy, etc. One of them stood out to me, and that is we aim for the win-win-win. Can you just explain a little bit what you mean?
Yeah, actually I'm very passionate about that principle, because it's like, instead of like limiting, it's like a motivating principle to look for it.
So who are the parties who would win in the best case?
Who would win? Preferably and that's what this principle is about. We say if you design a product or design a system, there should be a win for everybody. Like, there should be a win for that dude that's being observed walking through the shop, and there should be a win for the retailer, and maybe there should be a win for the chain store. But you should aim for creating value for all of those stakeholders, and not just for one stakeholder that rakes up the data. And one really interesting example is, I think, the Audi one, like with the car that you can share with 5 friends, but you also have Spinster. They're now launching a bicycle in the United States together with a Dutch bicycle manufacturer. You can lock you can just put your bike anywhere and you can lock it, and then someone can rent that bicycle from you. So it's a win for you as the bicycle owner. It's a win for the manufacturer that adds a service and connectivity to a bike to enable you to do stuff, and you can do something good for the environment. So it's like the network of stakeholders, they have a benefit in this.
All right, then last question. So for everybody here who works with connected devices, connected services, be it through marketing, be it because you're building products, be it because you're designers, what are your 3 key takeaways? Can you just give like 3, or do you want to give like 10 right away?
I'll do 10 takeaways. The 3 takeaways for anyone in this field. I think one is always try to approach it from the end user perspective. Always look at what the end user is doing and create a great experience, and just not go in for raking up the data. And the second one would be very cautious about which software is getting married to which object, because you don't want to have a really unfortunate examples, a connected bunny, or like the little printer from Berg, that when the company goes bankrupt and the software isn't maintained and the cloud stops working, that the physical objects stop functioning. Berg solved this beautifully by open sourcing everything, but you get the gist. And then the third one would be, do I have a third one?
Let's go with a win-win-win as the third.
Just do a win, and be careful. Like the third one would be, in the end, we're all human beings. We're not building the IoT for the robots. We're building it for us to make our life better.
Right. So let's all do that, and then hopefully next year we'll find some kids who actually know what's going on there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.